If stepping onto the path of your soul's calling has been really hard for you, I have been there too. It is so painful to put your heart and soul out there and to feel like things aren't working, no matter what you do. I have also been there. And while I was going through that, I wanted nothing more than to hear the encouragement to just keep pushing through. But my story took a much different turn. I ended up walking away from the somatic coaching business I spent the last 2 years building and really thought I was going to do that forever. And although I only have a few pieces as to where I'm going next, I really do feel like it was absolutely the most aligned decision for me. I didn't make this video to give you superficial encouragement and comfort. I made it for the version of me who spent her whole life holding everything together, keeping up an image of success, who was never allowed to fail, had to carry sky-high expectations on her shoulders, and so went through setback after setback while pursuing her soul purpose now so she could eventually free herself from all that pressure to be and do more. So if you can relate to any of this, I know there is something in this video for you, my heartbroken dreamer. We're now on the third video of 4 in a series where I'm sharing the advice that I would have given to the 4 different versions of me who emerged through this soul calling journey so far. So we had the bright-eyed first-timer, we talked about the overnight success seeker last video, and then the next one we're talking about the renewed creative spirit. So the heartbroken dreamer is characterized by this period of time where you are really invested in this dream and this vision, and you're pouring your heart and soul into it. And despite everything that you try to do, it's like you're hitting a wall. And you can feel that the potential of this life, this dream, this version of success is possible for you. And that's why you have been relentless with not giving up. Even as hard as it's been, all the times you've been knocked down, you get back up and you keep trying. And at the same time, there is this question of when is it time to potentially consider pivoting into a new version of what your soul's being called to do. If there's anything that I've learned from this phase of my journey is that it can really be disguised as failure. And specifically for those of us who have dealt with perfectionism, are healing from having to perform and be extracted from in order to feel worthy or loved in any capacity. And it's just playing through in this aspect of your life right now. So I really encourage those of you who have navigated those themes or are navigating them now, whether in the background or at the foreground, keep listening because I was right there and I can see so clearly now why things happened the way that they did. But before we get into all of the advice and those sort of insights that are further along the journey, I just really wanted to just pause and acknowledge what those feelings are that are there right now. The hurt, the blame, the anger, the grief, the disappointment, the resentment, whatever you're feeling right now is valid. It's so important to honor these feelings and let yourself feel them when they do come up. There is no other way through. It might take you a while to move through these feelings, to truly hold them and to acknowledge them, to give yourself the space to be able to see and feel the truths that are underneath all of that illusion. And in that process of feeling, it may actually push you to do drastic things and make big decisions. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. I think sometimes it can be confusing when, on one hand, we know that emotions can be a very direct expression of how we are truly feeling in the moment. And they are not always giving us guidance on how to act in our highest good. It's a process to be able to sift through all of those feelings and to really give yourself the time and space to figure out, first of all, how are you feeling? And to let yourself feel it fully. And then to afterwards decide, once it's all passed through your system, is that something that I need to act on or not? And this process in and of itself can take a really long time. And sometimes we do need to go through heartbreak after heartbreak because we just have such a capacity for it. And we're going to talk about that later, about what that means and some things you might want to watch out for if it seems like nothing is working out right now. I personally almost walked away from this version of my business I'm speaking about many times before I actually had all of the information, the energy, and the intention to actually do it. And it's because it took me a long time to come to the acceptance that what was happening was really happening. This may or may not apply to your situation, so use your discernment. But I was one of those people who just thought that everything always works out in the end. And if I just keep pouring into this, if I keep doing the work, if I keep following the trail, that eventually one day it would blossom. And I was very attached to this particular version of what I had built. If you watched my past videos, you know that I've built and burnt down several versions already of this business. And so I was already at a place like going through my Saturn return, themes of sustainability and long-term vision were really at the forefront of my mind. And I was really trying to make this one stick. For reasons I will share with you in the rest of this video, that just was not the case for me. And for me, what actually kind of made me start to think about things differently was a video on YouTube, just like this one. I think her name is Alicia, and it was a prophetic word video. And at first, when I clicked on it, the title didn't really have anything to do with what we're talking about right now, or at least I didn't think it did. And the more she talked about this biblical story of, I think it was like Paul who got shipwrecked on the island, but then he healed everybody on the island. And months before he was about to leave, there was already a ship that was built, and that was the ship that he used to get to his next destination. And the whole moral of that story, at least the way she explained it, was that the ship had to get wrecked for him to get to the island, to have the experiences that he had there. And when he was ready, when God's timing was ready, the boat became available to him to take him to his next destination. It was already built. There was nothing that he really had to do in that time aside from just be in the process. That was the video that woke me up from the cycle of just trying and trying and trying again and seeing the same results no matter what I did. I didn't go seeking for someone to tell me, hey, maybe it's time to look in a different direction. And I just couldn't see it because I was so devoted and so attached to this particular vision. For example, my parents had told me a number of times, they're entrepreneurs as well. And from the very beginning, my dad, I remember, had told me, you need to have a plan B. You need to have these checkpoints. And in the beginning, I was like, Dad, you are just cramping my vibe right now. Kind of going back to that bright-eyed first-timer energy, you're just recklessly optimistic and you're like, nothing is impossible. I'm going to do this. So there's a phase where you're almost immune to that kind of talk or just almost even afraid of it. If I'm being honest, I was afraid that he might be right. I didn't want to admit that there was another path for me. I didn't want that to be true. I just felt to me in my heart like this was what I was supposed to be doing. And any suggestion that that might not be the case, I was like, no, don't give me that right now. So when you're in this particular phase, the heartbroken dreamer, in the breakdown of things not going your way, what comes out of that is that it also breaks down your protective mechanisms, your defenses that are almost can distort your vision of what's really going on. I'm not saying that you have to give up on your dream. What I am saying that there is a very specific reason why you're going through what you're going through now. And it is actually preparing you for what's coming next. And you may not be able to see that right now, but when you're far enough removed from just being in the muck and the chaos, you will likely see that this is the case. So I do look back on the last 2 years and understand mostly how and why I experienced the setback after setback. It really didn't make sense to me then, but it does now. I realized that walking the path of alignment required me to learn certain lessons and embody what I was becoming. And if I hadn't just gone through and faced all the places where I was still being driven by perfectionism in the background or the need for external validation, I would not be where I am right now, which is in a position to truly create not based on what other people want from me, but from what I feel like in my heart and soul is what's needed and how I can make the biggest impact. I spent my whole life achieving to try to escape the possibility of failure, rejection, and imperfection. Ultimately, to really become okay with and safe from failure, rejection, imperfection, I actually had to go through those things again and again. I grew up avoiding these things and I was performing in order to survive. And the path that I'm walking, and probably many of you too are that are watching, is opening into this new earth reality where we don't have to perform in order to receive abundantly for our worth. We don't have to be extracted from. We don't have to sacrifice, to hustle, to grind, to work in the old ways. That we are creating a reality where we are completely and abundantly supported just for being who we are, equipped with the gifts that we have been given, and serving in the ways that light us up. I've had this vision for a few years now, and it's still becoming. I am still becoming that. Very much so. In the process of becoming, you learn to pick yourself back up again and again. And then you realize this is how you break out of the survival. That part of you that thinks that this is the end of the world if this doesn't work out for me, or what am I going to do? Who am I without this purpose or with this vision? And that loss of self, the loss of identity, that loss of meaning and purpose, while it can be so incredibly painful in the moment, stripping you away from the things that you are attached to is how you rebuild yourself, right? You have to go to those depths and those places that you're afraid of going in order to embody and truly not be afraid of them. I don't want this to sound like a bad omen of like, if you are terrified of something, it's going to happen to you. It's not like that. It's only if and when you are ready. If you are open to having the experience of spiritual growth, yeah, things are not going to always be sunshine and rainbows. We all know that. And when the time is right, when the circumstances are right, God is going to put you exactly where you need to be in order to learn what you need to learn to be able to pick yourself back up again. This wouldn't be happening to you if you didn't already have the base knowledge, tools, connection to pull yourself out of it. And you don't have to do it alone, right? There's so many different resources and support available to help you hold yourself when you don't know how, or you don't feel capable in this moment, or things are just feel so much. And this was a time when I truly leaned on everything and everyone around me because I realized I could not do it alone, and that's why I created the resources that I did during that time. Embodied Worth is a course where I give 12 practices that have the somatic tools and self-validation practices that really helped take me through that transition and into the next phase, still feeling like I hadn't lost anything, still feeling like whole within myself and trusting that, okay, we experienced failure, rejection, loss, back to back to back. You guys don't even know what's been happening behind the scenes. While everything looks great and perfect from the outside, that's not how it went. While I'm not ready to share everything that happened behind the scenes, just know that I was also going through a reckoning behind the curtain. So that's how I know that even when everything falls apart, you will still be carried through. You're going to make it through to the other side. And this is just a temporary phase where you just take it day by day. You be kind to yourself. You let yourself be held and supported as much as possible, especially if you're someone who also is used to being the one to have to hold everyone else or to have everything held perfectly in place all on your own. This could be a big lesson and opportunity for you to just to surrender to that. But we do want to hold and validate ourselves as much as possible when we feel like we have no control over what's going on. However, that can also quickly turn into an endurance test. So I thought that if I just fix or work harder on this particular aspect of the business, almost putting out fires everywhere, thinking that, once this thing will be in place, then I'll be where I want to be, or once this thing gets done, then I'll be where I want to be. But it seems like everything that I did, I was just being met with a stone wall from spirit. What I learned from that experience is that it was showing me exactly where I was holding on to and surviving on bare minimum. First of all, exposing the fact that I was tolerating bare minimum and letting me see just how much I was willing to struggle and endure and even sacrifice what I needed. I went on for 2 years on basically breadcrumbs for my vision. And don't get me wrong, I was constantly practicing seeing what was there and being grateful for it and being thankful for the goodness that has come about. And my vision was so big that I was like, there is a huge disparity between what I envisioned was possible and what was currently going on. And for 2 years, I went on feeling like something was missing. And so then it ultimately pushed me to raise my standards for myself and let go of what is not working. Because it's all fun and good when you're doing well on your soul purpose journey. But when that journey puts you in a really tight place where 3D things get kind of like in the way, but also are like, well, you can't ignore the fact that we live in a world that runs on money and we only have so much time in a day. I just got really caught up in being so willing to pour so much into something and just riding on the faith that I knew things were going to work out at some point, but also neglecting that in the present moment, I have needs that are not getting fulfilled or met. And I reached a point where I was no longer able or willing to tolerate the disparity, the discomfort of that. And that awareness of boundary is what compelled me to let go and to move forward with something different. So this time of struggle, though I did develop a lot of the resilient qualities that I still carry with me today, it ultimately showed me that even though I thought I was happy with the freedom my business gave me, like one of many aspects of what I had created, ultimately I was still not being filled enough by it. And I felt really kind of selfish almost in the beginning when I realized that my basic human needs were like sometimes not getting met, or I was stressing about them not getting met. And weirdly, that dynamic put me straight back into the feeling of being extracted from. Like I had to do things that I didn't want to do, or I had to keep up with certain types of extractive work that I just wasn't lit up by. And obviously, that wasn't conducive to sustaining and supporting the vision of heart-led service that I was creating. So there was a lot of internal conflicts happening at this time. And it took all of this for me to walk away and be satisfied with my decision. And I don't blame myself. If I'm being really honest, there was a part of me that used to really enjoy playing the victim and just kind of feeling like if things are always just out of reach, then I'll always have a reason to exit something. I'll always have an escape hatch. I'll always be able to have a reason to not be fully there. And then there was also a part of me that wanted to just keep going back for more until I had enough painful experiences that I could just no longer tolerate the deprivation. So eventually I realized that there's no more for me in this direction, or it's just going to be more of the same. And you'll feel this when you get to the stage of this journey. You've been through enough struggles that that boundary comes up. You've hit your sort of proverbial bottom. You cannot continue to give without being filled up. And that's totally normal and natural, right? The other thing I wanted to say, I mentioned this briefly before, is that some part of what you are doing or were doing that you may have just recently walked away from is working. And that is what you are meant to take with you into the next chapter. Not necessarily in the same form. It can be something completely different, but you took something very important from this last chapter. You needed that in order to move on to the next. And even though maybe the dream didn't exactly manifest or align with that current version of the reality that you created, it doesn't mean that the dream as a whole has to be written off. It is still definitely possible because it was given to you. I really believe now that the ideas that we're given is God's way of communicating with us. These ideas and these visions are given to us specifically because we are meant to be their stewards. We are meant to carry them forward. And it's this journey, this crazy journey of becoming the steward for that dream and that idea that sometimes can throw us so far off that we collapse and we think, oh, I'm never going to get there, or who am I to think that I could have done that? All of these really negative, self-doubting thoughts will come in the midst of heartbreak and disappointment. But again, like I said in the beginning, when you take the time and space to really let yourself feel, those feelings will pass through you. Eventually, I had to sit with a lot of anger and resentment and blame and all kinds of really hard feelings for months on end. But after all of that subsides, and it will, what you will eventually see that it's just about tweaking your alignment. There are some parts of that dream that you collected in your last chapter. You bring that with you to the next one where it's going to be more of that dream. I don't know where this came from, the expectation that kind of like from the Overnight Success Seeker video, where just the expectation that as soon as you are brave enough to step off of the familiar path, that maybe you go through one bump or like a couple of bumps and then you just land into the kingdom of heaven. I don't know where that comes from, but like more and more after all of the rebirths that I've been through in the last couple of years, this timeline actually gets stretched out and you realize that every version is just one version closer to that dream. And you can, of course, like accomplish those dreams and then you'll be given new ones. So there's always like this, it's a continuous state of creation that once you're done with something, you are going to be given something else to build. And so even if and when you get to that dream, that quote unquote end point, amazing, congratulations. I'll be so happy for you. And then you're going to be given a new assignment, start all over again and like build something else, you know? I've become like really aware of this illusion that there is some end point where everything is going to be easy and safe and perfect. When I finally get there, that illusion gets shattered like every day for me and in like the best way, because now I can actually live in the present moment and I can actually be more and more in the process of life rather than just doing it. I can actually be in it. And I hope that's true for you too. When you're walking the path of soul calling, you're agreeing to be held to higher spiritual standards. Nothing that you've done or ever will do is ever completely wrong. But again, if some of it was not completely right, you are going to feel the effects of that so you can shift accordingly. Like as spiritual seekers, the longer you're walking this path, the less that you can like really get away with in the sense that other people can, you know? You might be thinking in your head that everything as a whole kind of like failed or it didn't pan out the way that you would have wanted it to. But I guarantee you that if you look closer, there are aspects of what you were doing that were working really well. You know, if you look at the parts of the whole that make up the whole, it wasn't all going wrong, right? I'm sure that there were points of breakthrough for you. There were highs as well as lows. Maybe the lows outnumbered the highs, but the highs were still there. And this added to the confusion for me at first when I was starting to get more realistic and assessing whether my dream was viable or not in the timeline that I had assigned for it. But now I see that I just didn't know back then that I could just take that creative aspect, the part of my business I created that I actually genuinely loved and was meant to carry forward with me. I didn't know that I could separate that from the identity that I had built around it, coaching specifically. I loved creating content for Instagram and YouTube and writing emails and anything creative I just like loved to do. I didn't love so much the coaching aspect, even though I was good at it. It took a long time for me to realize I could like separate those two aspects and just do the creative part, because pretty much what I had seen was that those two things were always packaged together. And that's what has survived from the last version of me and my business. I'm just bringing forward what was working, which also happened to be what I love to do. No coincidence there. And you can do the same. And this one kind of goes without saying, but self-forgiveness is so huge at this stage. If you're still blaming yourself for past failures and mistakes, that's why you're going to continue to feel hurt, devastated, and disappointed today. We all know this already. I don't need to, repeat how our past experiences inform our present, but it's really worth tending to those parts of you and this last version of you. And if there are any previous versions to that on this path to your soul's calling who feel heartbroken and maybe feel at fault for what happened. I mean, there were several times where I did sit down and do self-forgiveness practices over this last couple of years, but I find that it's a continuous practice. The more we do it, the more genuine it becomes. I think it can be really hard at first to think like, well, if I'm the co-creator of my reality, did I not create this for myself? And this was my fault, or, all kinds of stories that we tell ourselves. And so I think it'll be a huge weight off your shoulders to go back and really try to see how you were just doing your best with what you knew and what you were given at the time, and that your task was really just to grow and to learn. And I think that you certainly did that. And of course, when you've taken in the lessons from this phase of being the heartbroken dreamer, you will heal and you're going to come back stronger. Probably not in the same ways as before. You might not show up in the same capacity or role, but you'll be transformed. And that's the whole point. I'll talk about what comes next more in the renewed creative spirit video that is coming out next week. I have so much compassion for anyone who's going through this part of the journey right now. It was so fresh for me that I know how hard and tender it can be. And at the same time, I know you are going to come out of it with exactly what you need. And that everything that is not supposed to come with you into this next chapter is going to be shed. Don't rush yourself out of this sacred cocoon that you're in. A very important transformation is happening for you right now. And I can't wait to see where it takes you. Next week, we're going to wrap up this series with the final video about the renewed creative spirit. It's been so much fun to put this together for you. And if you have any ideas for what you would like to see the next series be about, please leave that in the comments and also let me know what resonated with you from today's video. And I'm sending you so much love. I will see you next time.